mild or wild? That's Dr. Judah Cohen's forecast for this upcoming winter on the Something in the Air podcast. As we do every fall, we bring on Dr. Cohen to the show to talk about his thoughts for this upcoming winter, as well as what he is up to here, as he is quite the person to talk about when it comes to seasonal forecasting, always pushing the boundaries of what can be done by humans when it comes to forecasting for the weeks and months ahead here. Usually we do our monthly weather roundups, but for something like the winter forecast, we do a special like this one for you right here. So hang out wherever you are, relax, and let's talk about snow, cold, or lack thereof. The 2023-2024 winter outlook, Something in the Air podcast. Okay, now's the time that I think many of us have been waiting for. What can we expect this winter? And as we have over the past couple of years, I'm so excited to have in the flesh, in the Zoom flesh, I should say, Dr. Judah Cohen. He is the director of seasonal forecasting for Verisk AER. He's up in Massachusetts, but Verisk is in New Jersey. So we have a New Jersey company talking to us about the winter outlook. Judith, thanks so much for being here again. We always appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Joe. Enjoyed last year, and I'm sure this will be just as much fun. So.
Yes, and hopefully I'm speaking on behalf of snow lovers everywhere. Maybe have some good snow news for us. We had a record low snow last winter here in much of New Jersey, but how's it been going with you over the past year? And then we'll start diving into what to, some winter forecast. How's it going with you personally, professionally, since the last time we chatted?
Yeah, everything's good. It's all about the polar vortex.
Yes.
All the time. I'm trying to make progress on that. And I do feel like I've made some, important progress, better understanding, and trying to crank out a couple of papers that hopefully people out there will find interesting.
Okay.
So yeah,
cool.
And especially with the polar vortex, I don't know, I'm maybe going on a little bit off of a tangent, so stop me.
That's all right. It's your time to shine. It's your time to shine.
I really, and it's timely. The more I look into it, it's amazing to me how important what I call these stretch polar vortex events are on North American weather, and it's really not been studied at all. And I've just really been kind of just obsessed with it. And and so we just had this, all summer was about the record warmth, even going into the spring, the record warmth. When September was everybody was showing globally, but the U.S. was certainly no exception. Just there's so much superlative, right? Warmth. It broke the records by like an ungodly amount, just never unprecedented. You don't see records broke, global averages, so again, it was warm, and there was like almost record low snow cover across North America. And then we had the stretch polar vortex event, and we went from record warm temperatures in a very short period and record low snow cover. And I don't know if Dave Robinson talked to you about this, and we're, to record low snow cover, like in a week to record cold temperatures and record, extensive snow cover. So, and that was all triggered by this stretch polar vortex event. So
I want to get into that, and we will get into that. Just explain for our audience, though, what the difference between a stretched polar vortex event is and a split polar vortex event is, because I think that's the crux of a lot of your forecasting that you do.
Right. So they're traditionally, right, there's been thought of as two different states of the polar vortex. There was a strong polar vortex and a weak polar vortex. But what's important is that the circulation expands much further south. And if the kind of the perimeter of the polar vortex is maybe the most southward extent of Arctic air, and you go from circular close to the pole to something that's, way distorted, but like kind of these lobes heading way south than normal, that's when you get the Arctic outbreaks. And the one that was really only considered, so it was really a binary state. You had a strong polar vortex and a weak polar vortex. And that weak polar vortex was also known as the sun stratospheric warming. Why it was called that is because there's a very dramatic and rapid warming of the polar stratosphere. So the Arctic region in the stratosphere warms, up to like 100 degrees Fahrenheit in like 3 days. I mean, it's something that just doesn't happen here at the surface. So very, very dramatic. And it takes two forms. One is a displacement where the polar vortex really weakens a lot, but it gets kind of shoved off the North Pole into one of the continents, typically Eurasia, but it could be North America. And then the other one, which you referred to, was the split. And these where it splits, so you had one parent vortex splits into two daughter vortices. Typically, again, one goes to North America, one goes to Eurasia. Those were my favorite type of polar vortex states, because I didn't really show it rigorously, but it was my opinion that when you got the splits, you tend to get best chance for a big blockbuster nor'easter snowstorm in the Northeast. I mean, 1978 for Boston was certainly a split vortex. Pretty sure February 2010. So for the Mid-Atlantic, your epic, we had a split polar vortex. And I'm working on a paper that basically shows the most extreme cold air outbreaks are associated not with these sun stratospheric warmings that everybody was studying, but rather with these stretch polar vortex events that we've really has been ignored, I feel like, by the community, and that I've certainly become obsessed with.
And you've talked about a lot on your Twitter page or X page, whatever we're calling it nowadays here. But you can find Judah on Twitter or X at Judah47. Judah, let's just go back to last winter. I want to read you some snowfall totals from New Jersey, and I want your reaction on this. Atlantic City International Airport, 0.03.
Trying to give me a heart attack or something?
Well, and see, there we go. There's the reaction, the heart attack. We had 0 in Cape May Courthouse. We had 0.2 of an inch in Toms River. We go up to Newark. We had 2.7 inches. And then we started getting over a foot in towns like Rockaway, New Jersey, up in the northwest corner of the state. And we had 15.3 in Newton. All that being said, it was not very snowy here. And despite December being below average across the state for temperatures, including our record coldest Christmas Eve, December 24th. From there, it was just a torch for us across the state. We had the record warmest January on record, according to our friend, New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. And February and March were both above average. So just give us a recap of what you were thinking as we went into last winter with your forecast here. Just a quick recap of what you were saying, and then how it played out, not only in New Jersey, but across the Northeast.
Yeah, so I don't remember what I said, last year with you, but I mean, certainly by the time the final forecast came out and it was on the blog, it was in real time. We were predicting a warmer than normal winter for the eastern, 2/3 of the country. We had cold in the northwestern quadrant of the country. The area that we did the worst was actually the desert Southwest, where we had above normal temperatures. It was actually below normal, but did not get the magnitude. So was predicting an above normal, temperature wise, was predicting below normal, but what we missed was the magnitude. So I feel like the forecast performed pretty well, but obviously I wasn't predicting. We weren't predicting record warm or record low snowfall. So, but overall I was, fairly pleased. And so we had La Nina, which definitely tends to shift when you get cold air, shift the cold air west. So that was not a great setup for the Eastern U.S. I know you want to talk about it, and it's certainly, I think, what I'm best known for, and for good reason. Siberian snow cover.
Yep.
So when snow cover is above normal in Siberia in the fall months, I tend to focus in October, but as I'm discussing in the blog, others have said November can be an important month, but it was above normal, but just barely. And compared to recent years, It was below normal, compared to the past 10, 15, 20 years. But if you go back to the, so Dave Robinson has a record back to 1972. So if you go back that far, it was above normal, but not compared to, let's say, the past 20 years. So it was not a great signal. It wasn't a strong signal either way, but certainly wasn't gonna cancel out the warm signal from La Nina.
Got it.
I also look at Arctic sea ice. I think also that kind of favored a westward shift in the cold air. And we have another predictor, sea level pressure anomalies in Eurasia in the month of October. I think it kind of tells you if you're going to have a weak polar vortex. So that was in there. That was also almost neutral. So I think La Nina kind of dominated the model. So we got a very La Nina-like looking signal. And for the most part, it worked out. It just, the Southwest was, was too warm.
Got it. All right. Good to know. Good to know. We will finish this part of the interview looking back and what we saw last winter. And then on the other side of the break, we'll tell you about what Dr. Cohen's thinking about for this upcoming winter on the Something in the Air podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to our Something in the Air podcast special edition here, our winter weather outlook for 2023-2024. Typically, we have our podcast right around the turn of the month. We recap the month that was with Dr. Cohen's former advisor when he was in college, New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. But today we have the, I shouldn't even say apprentice, the now esteemed Dr. Judah Cohen here. I'm going to start off with this for you. Speaking of our friend Dave Robinson, he told me to ask you this. So like you mentioned in the first part, the snowfall in October and maybe November in Eurasia, Europe, and Asia can play a role in this winter. But his question for me to you is, there was a very rapid increase in snowfall at the end of October here across portions of the northern hemisphere. And he wanted to know what you thought about that, and just would that favor snow here in New Jersey or not favor snow in New Jersey? I don't want to get into the full forecast yet, but just on that specific question.
Yeah, no, I would definitely be in the camp that it was a very slow start. But if there was any chance of kind of redeeming this winter, it was definitely the last week in October. Across the northern hemisphere. I mean, it was a very impressive advance, both North America and Eurasia. But I think at this time of year, the Eurasian snow cover is more important. So we can talk about the forecast, but I definitely think that if there's any hope of again, I guess it depends on you or prejudices or preferences for winter. So, but if you like cold and snow, I mean, that was a bit of a Hail Mary. So
got it. So we'll check one in the box for snow lovers there. But I'm going to, based on your tone, that there might not be a lot to hang your hat on if you do like cold and snow this winter. I do want to get into some other factors that you're probably considering this winter. And one is the return of El Nino. For the first time since 2019-20, El Nino is back in the equation here. So really you have to go back before COVID to have a El Nino year here across the area. And that pretty much, and the way I describe this to people when I'm doing talks is, you have to rearrange the way you think about winter completely different when you have an El Nino. El Nino is when you have warmer than average water temperatures across the equator off the coast of South America. La Nina is the opposite, colder than average water. So talk to us about how much El Nino is influencing, at least the forecast here in New Jersey.
Yeah, so I think actually El Nino has or La Nina, so ENSO together, right, taking both phases. ENSO has a pretty good relationship with snowfall in the mid-Atlantic states, including New Jersey, though more for Atlantic City than what do you call it? Newton, New Jersey.
Newton, all the way up north. Yes, Newton.
But yeah, the Mid-Atlantic, that DC to Philadelphia over to certainly the southern half of New Jersey. Pretty good relationship for snowfall where La Nina favors less below normal and El Nino favors above normal. Actually, there are two places that seem to be the most sensitive to the phase of ENSO. The Mid-Atlantic and this, like in the southwestern, like New Mexico, Texas area.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, El Nino by itself, does favor more snowfall. And, you're, I guess, both our mentors, but more to you than me, Dave Robinson. He's a big ENSO guy, so I won't disagree with that. And I'm sure he would echo similar sentiment. However, the caveat is I'm a little bit nervous or trepidatious about going like whole hog on, El Nino is going to bring this banner snowfall year to the Mid-Atlantic because it's currently strong. It's strong. So you have weak, moderate, strong, and it's in the strong category. There are not many winters that are strong El Ninos, really just 4, and to be honest, 3. So I'll throw them out there, not that many, 82, 83. 97, 98, and 2015, 16. So those were all mild winters in the Eastern U.S. I would say not a lot of snow events, but certainly in 82, 83 and 2015, 16, when there was, I mean, they were, barn burners. So, so I would say based on strong El Nino, definitely a mild winter.
Yep.
Not many snowstorms, but maybe if we get one, it's the big one.
Yeah, and I just want to go through those 3 winters again here. So you said 2015, 16. Right. I'll go off of Atlantic City International Airport. We had 27.5 inches of snow, which is above average. Average is about 17 and a half. A large chunk of that came in one storm that we had that winter, and that was in mid-January. And then you said 97, 98, correct?
There are no big snowstorms in that one.
There was nothing. There was one. In fact, again, and we're covering a whole state. I'm just using this as an example. But AC International got one snow, literally one, and that was in December, and it snowed 2.5, I believe, or 3 inches of snow. And then you said 8. What was the third one you said there, Gina?
82, 83. So there was a very famous President's Day snowstorm.
That was PD. Do we call that PD1? Is that what we call that? President's Day 1 storm?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was not a President's Day, but it was a February storm, but not
February
not
storm.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Yep. And that one, again, ACY, of course, snowfall totals are going to vary tremendously throughout the state. That was actually above average, not by much, but above average. And there were 2 main snows, one that February one that you did discuss. And then there was actually one in December here, at least in the southern part of the state, that brought some snow. So again, he's just saying based on El Nino alone, that strong El Nino. Judah, take us into, are there any other factors? We talked about polar vortex. We talked about El Nino. Any other factors before we dive into the meat and potatoes of what you're thinking?
I mean, obviously, I'm looking at Siberian snow cover. So, your friend, Dave Robinson, our friend.
Yes.
Very esoteric how they compute that, that monthly snow cover. So I don't have the final numbers. I think it'll be above normal, based on the long-term average, but below normal relative to recent winters. Not a great signal for, a cold, snowy winter. Okay, not a strong signal either way, but I wouldn't take it. I do think that I have another index. So there's what's the snow cover extent index that Dave Robertson computes. So how much area is covered by snow across all of Eurasia in the month of October? And again, I think that's almost like a toss-up, not going to really impact our forecast. There's another one I look at, and this is what comes to the Dave Robertson question: the snow advance index. How fast does it accelerate the snow cover? So, is there like an acceleration of snow cover across a month, or is it kind of stall and plateau? So, the faster it advances, if you have little snow at the beginning of the month and a lot of snow at the end, that's a positive value. And then if it's a lot of snow at the beginning of the month and very little at the end, that's a negative value. So I've kind of used it different ways, but how I use it, my rule of thumb is if it's a positive value, that indicates if you're going to get a big weakening of the polar vortex, more likely to happen early in the winter. And if it's a negative value, if you're going to get you're not going to get a big disruption of the polar vortex early on. And it'll more likely happen later in the winter. So last year, this SAI, which I use, it was a negative. Yep. I did think, if there's going to be a polar vortex disruption, it'll be late. And it was in the second half of February, which is quite late, and helped the ski resorts in New England, didn't help the rest of us. But this year positive, so I do think there will be, if there's a big polar vortex disruption, more likely to be earlier on. Quasi-biennial oscillation. I'll just, to make it simple, is positive and easterly. And I also believe when it's positive, which is westerly, negative, which is easterly. Okay, so when people usually talk about easterly, westerly, but when it's easterly, I think that also favors if there's a big polar vortex disruption, it'll be early. If it's westerly or negative, if there's going to be a big polar vortex disruption, that's late. Again, this is my ideas, opinion, no one else's. But last year was also westerly, so it oscillates every other year, right? So last year was westerly. We did have a big polar vortex disruption. It was late in the winter. This year is easterly. So I think tends to support this idea. If we're going to get a big one, it'll be earlier on. So we have not put out our official winter forecast, but based on the snow cover, the El Nino, the strong El Nino, definitely leaning on the milder side, maybe, not a big snowfall number. Probably for the mid-Atlantic. I mean, I did run the numbers for Washington, D.C., so maybe the Atlantic City, I wouldn't expect to be too different. So close to normal, but, but I do think that the fact that there's rapid advance at the end of the month, maybe the Eastern QBO, there's, I think if there's going to be any kind of like really meaningful winter, it's going to take an earlier, large polar vortex disruption. If the forecast, and again, I'm talking about, it's not official, and I will put it on our blog, and you can just look up Judah Cohen Arctic, and it should be like the first thing that comes up in a Google search.
Okay. So we're saying here with the winter generally above average with temperatures here, yeah. And snowfall, it sounds like, an average is so finicky with snow, right? You can get average snow in one event, but it sounds like are you saying that this could be like a boom or bust year with snowfall? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I do that. Again, I do think that the El Nino does kind of shift that probability, maybe loads the dice to getting like a big one, seems that way. Not a lot of data points, so I wouldn't take out a second mortgage on that. But yeah, El Nino tends to favor the southern stream, right? Energizes the subtropical, the southern jet stream. You're not going to get a snowstorm in Atlantic City if the storm's tracking along the U.S.-Canadian border. Okay, it's just not happening. You need that storm to your south. You need it, hopefully maybe it comes through the coast of California and takes a southerly track, and it hits the Gulf, maybe it sucks up a lot of moisture in there, and then makes the turn as it goes off the coast, and there happens to be cold air in place. So that's, 82, 83, we had like one Arctic outbreak, and in 2015, 16, the same thing, basically one Arctic outbreak, but we had the storm that came up, and, and they met right over the mid-Atlantic, and, and it was, snowstorm lore, right. Both those winters. Again, we had 97, 98, a strong El Nino, and no one can remember. I can't remember anything from that winter other than just, let's just move on to the next winter, please.
And Jude, I was just going to ask this too. I just want to kick the can down to like March. Any thoughts on, because March can be right, spring month, wintry month, obviously flip flopping. It sounds like you might be leaning towards an earlier spring. I don't think we're hanging on to winter too much.
Okay, so again, the conventional wisdom is, El Nino, I think with El Nino, if I'm right, you tend to get winter late. So that's not consistent with what I'm saying, but I think it can be because so in 2009-10, there was a moderate El Nino, and we had two large polar vortex disruptions. There was one in December and then again in February. It doesn't happen often, but if we do get let's say a polar vortex disruption in December, then it has to recover and it takes time. You don't get these large ones, every other week. It takes time to reload. But if we do get one early, then you can get a pretty active pattern. Talk about cold snow, December into January, then it kind of become more boring pattern, I think. And then there is time for another large polar vortex disruption. And this is very speculative. I can't see that far. And even me, right? I can't see that far in the future. But,
no, even you, you can see.
I'm not going to tell you every month exactly what's going to happen. But, if using 2009-10 as a model, where we got easterly QBO, a moderate El Nino, not strong, but moderate. There was one large polar vortex disruption in December and then a second one in February. And if certainly in the Mid-Atlantic, right, there was a big snowstorm in December, and then again, there were a couple in February. So, and January was not that, really not too much memorable. So, that could happen, right? So, I don't want to rule it out. It's hard, it's hard to see even the first polar vortex disruption. I certainly can't see what's beyond that, though there will clearly be a recovery of the polar vortex. That has to be. And then there's the potential for a second polar vortex. If we don't get the second one, then I think, it'll be all front loaded, as they say. But
front loaded.
But if we do get, but there is a possibility of kind of, a sandwich of sorts, right? So you'd have if you like snow and cold, you got the white bread, whatever, the beginning and the end, and then it's something not, I don't know if it's lettuce in the middle or something, that's you don't get excited about.
Okay.
I could use another term. I don't want to use it, but so something like that. So kind of winter kind of bookends. Again, this is not a good example, but in 2017-18, again, it was a very active early part of the winter, and you can look it up in your books, right? We had this incredibly cold holiday period. I know New England, they almost ran out of natural gas. And there was the bomb cyclone. I think maybe one of the first times they used the term bomb cyclone. Yeah. You must have gotten into that at the very end of the first week of January.
Yeah, you said 17-18?
Yeah, 17-18. So
that was tremendous. I first started at the Press of Atlantic City winter of 17, and that was tremendous cold. We had a Delaware Bay freeze over.
Yeah, that week was, in Boston, I think we failed to get above 10 degrees maybe for a week straight. Something crazy. It only happened once before, and it was in 1917-18 or something. So it was 100 years since anything kind of cold like that had happened. And then the bomb cycle, and then nothing happened. And February was, as you used the word, torch, record warm. And then came March, and I know New Jersey got in. It was called For Easter, right?
For Easter. Yes.
So again, we had kind of this winter bookend where it was exciting, active from a winter standpoint at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, nothing went on. So I could see something like that. I'm not going to stay on your show here, but I said I definitely something that I'm considering more, for this winter than I would have liked, for instance, last winter. But
all right, well, very good to know, Judah. As always, we love chatting with you here. You can find him.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for inviting me. I'll come on. As long as you remember me and invite me on.
I never forget about you, especially during the winter months. Then I really never forget about you.